1, so I'm going to go
Do you
ahead
want
and admit.
everybody's admitting then?
Good afternoon, everybody. We're just waiting for everybody to get admitted here. All right. My name is Karen Kurt. I'm the Executive Director for the East Central Iowa Council of Governments. Welcome to another Turbo Talk in our series. And today we are delighted to have Jim Thompson with us from IEDA. He works in I think it's called the Downtown Group or Main Street Group.
Yes.
Um, and he's here to talk to us about the Catalyst Grant program, which is a wonderful tool to have in your toolbox as you're looking at downtown redevelopment. Before I turn it over to him and we kind of boot up the PowerPoint, I just want to remind folks that we will have another Turbo Talk on November 6th at 1 o'clock, and that one is going to be with the Iowa Arts Council, and they'll be talking about the funding opportunities that they have available. And for those of you that haven't been with us before, we typically will post a recording of this on our website after the event. In this case, it'll probably be early next week. So if you missed something or you wanted more details, you'll be able to refer to that, and we'll also have a PDF of the slides available there as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to start the talk, and I'm going to share your slide deck here.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jim Thompson. Everybody asks me, what does it mean when you work for the Iowa Economic Development Authority and you work specifically in the Downtown Resource Center? What it means is towns that choose to save themselves can. And those that choose not to are going to fail. Maybe not tomorrow, but they're going to fail. And so we're really trying to figure out how can we help them. So if we could go to the first slide. Sorry, this is going to be a little clunky because I was not able to control the slide deck, and so they're doing it for me. And but we'll get through it. We're
It's
talking a half an hour. So what I wanted to start with is showing you a project that worked, and the building on the left, I want to say it is never the building's fault when they look like this. What happened is the building owner used residential products to put on a commercial building downtown, and that is never appropriate rehab. And it's not the building's fault, but I'm also going to tell you it is really not the building owner's fault totally either. The city has to decide what they want for their community. Where they set the bar on their expectations is what's going to happen ultimately. And what was good about Stanton is after this very first Catalyst project and several years ago, they've now done 12 other buildings in that very, very small town, and we're making things happen, but we're encouraging and requiring appropriate rehab. So next, we're talking specifically about the Community Catalyst Grant Program, and it's to develop or rehabilitate buildings that will serve as an example for reinvestment in the community. Next slide. So when we do that, we're really looking for buildings that are vacant first, that will serve as an example for other additional projects that exhibit appropriate design. So if you do inappropriate design, we're never going to pay for that. And frankly, we don't want you to either. So they have to demonstrate partnerships and really have the dollars together to make this happen. Next slide. So the applicant is always the city. It does not mean that the city has to write the application, but it does mean that they must be the applicant. So there is a little confusion over this sometimes. Some cities view this as other duties as assigned, and they think they shouldn't have to write these. So sometimes we have COGs that do this. Sometimes we have building owners that do this. We don't care who writes it as long as the city understands they're the applicant. So grants are up to $100,000. What's cool about any funding round is we'll do 40% of the funds to towns with population under 1,500. We do require a pre-application process. We score those. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the full applications are by invitation only. One of the keys to this, and I'm going to say this several times, is that the city and the property owner must provide financial resources. Next slide. So the project is the proposed remediation of a vacant or severely underutilized building. It has to be at least one building. We define that by address, but it can be no more than two. If you do two buildings, and we do not encourage this, but if you do two buildings, they must be contiguous and have the same ownership. The reason we don't encourage this is you don't get any extra money. Now you split the up to $100,000 over two buildings as opposed to one. But if you're going to work on two different addresses, two different buildings, then we want to make sure it's part of the full application and that you're going to tell us how you're going to spend your money. Next slide. So the use of the funds is really critical to this process, and you do that through what we call a scope of work. So you're going to tell us how you're going to spend the money. If any way that you spend the money differently than you've identified through the scope of work, we're going to deny those claims and make you do what you said you're going to do. So we're going to do this with the applicant, that's the city, and then the city is going to work with the property owner generally on appropriate use of funds. And then we're going to work through that with a contract with the city. And then the city is going to have a development agreement with the property owner. Next slide. So the money is going to serve as a pass-through for the city. The amount of the award is going to be determined by us at the IEDA based on your application. So an applicant, a city, can have no more than one grant per fiscal year, and it has to not exceed $100,000. But as I said, 40% of the money of any funding round is going to be set aside for populations less than 1,500. So if you're a very small town, you need to put this on your radar screen. We're actually higher than 40% since this program was started. We're closer to 50% of all awards. So don't ever say that you're not going to be competitive if you're a small town. Frankly, this one sets money aside so that you can be competitive and get those dollars also. Next slide. We are going to require a contract, and it's going to be with the city. So we're going to negotiate the terms of that contract. It will be for 24 months or 2 years. So we're not going to pay you back any claim until you demonstrate a development agreement with us. This is kind of a weird situation. We thought in the very first year that no city would ever award a grant without a development agreement, and then we realized they did. And so to protect the project and to protect the city, we're requiring a development agreement so everyone knows exactly what their responsibilities are. Next slide. This is the fiscal year 26. The pre-applications are open now, and they must be submitted by January 29th of 2026. If you submit after that date, you're not going to be scored. Full applications will be by invitation only. And after we invite those, we do it first in, first out, that you have to have the full application submitted by April 15th. And then sometime in June, based on when we can get a meeting with Debbie Durham, is when we're going to present the award letters. Next slide. So this says one application per Iowa community. The budget is $1 million, but I can now tell you that our approved budget is going to be closer to $3 million for this funding round. And so it's on a reimbursement basis. And that means that once you spend the money as a property owner, you have an invoice. We want you to demonstrate proof of payment. That's an electronic scan provided by your bank of the front and back of the check. The city then submits a claim to us, and the midpoint draw cannot exceed more than 60% of the award. So if you get a grant for $100,000 and you spend $60,000, no match on the midpoint draw, we'll reimburse you $60,000. No costs incurred before the award letter date can be included as part of that grant reimbursement. So don't spend any money that you want reimbursed until you get the award letter date. Next slide. So here's the 10 steps to the pre-application. And again, city's going to be the applicant, but we really want you to spend time on what is the project description that's telling the story of what you're going to do, what's actually driving this project locally, why was the building selected, the impact of the Catalyst grant. Frankly, tell us if you don't get the grant, you may not be able to do the project. That's pretty darn simple. Total dollars applied for, and then an estimated total project cost. Again, this is a pre-application, so we're not expecting anything other than estimates. We do want you to confirm that the city's going to financially contribute to the project, whether it's cash or in kind. Sometimes it's both. The property owner has skin in the game also, and they're going to do that. We want a map knowing where it's located. We need photos of the building and the site. And then if the property owner is a private property owner, we want to know who it is. You have to get 7 out of these 10 to move on to full application. Frankly, pre-application is pretty darn simple. We eliminate about 24 applications, and almost all of those are the ones that the city's not putting money in or the property owner's not putting money in. If you don't do that, you're immediately eliminated and you're not going to be invited to full application. Full application then is really based on these 5 categories. Existing building, tell us what's there. Show us pictures of what's there. What are you going to do to it? That's the building improvements. Show us how you're going to improve the building appropriately. What's the economic impact? The funding, budget, and partnerships. You can see economic impact and the partnership categories are the highest points. That's why it's a catalyst. And then what is the impact on the area? So if you don't get 60 points, you will not be considered for funding. Every round, we have projects that fall below the 60 point and they're not considered for funding. Next slide. So required documents, we need a letter of support from the city just saying, yes, we acknowledge that we're the applicant and we're going to apply on this property owner's basis, or a building that the city owns that they want to transition to a private building owner. We'll never fund city-owned buildings that are city halls or libraries or any of those things. We want the building to be responsible for property tax. So it's okay if the city owns it, with the idea that they're going to go and transition it to a private building owner at some point. There is a project assurances page. That's just saying, city, you're agreeing that you're going to do this project appropriately. We need the map. We want a list of any other additional contractual liabilities. This doesn't always happen, but it does at sometimes. That's why we include it. What is the financing? Loan commitment letters or performas. Now, if you get a letter from the bank that says, we really like this person and they're a good person, that's garbage and don't submit it. We want to know what's the terms, what's the percentage that they're going to charge for terms, and what's the length. If you provide anything else, it's really a thank you letter and we don't care. And then any other grant letters, we want to know if you've got money from a local foundation or other kinds of things that will really help your score. But they really do need to be secured, not applied for. If you apply for financing and it's not secured, we're going to assume that you're not going to get that. So you have plenty of time to get this award done. So if it's applied for, please don't waste our time. Next slide.
Very slow on my end here.
Uh,
Huh.
we seem to be frozen.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So all 940, every Iowa incorporated town is eligible. The cities have to be the applicant. So we've done almost $30 million and approaching 300 funded projects. The one thing that I'd really like to consider is we encourage a local request for proposals. When we work in downtowns all across the state, knowing that there are 3 or 4 building owners that would be interested in doing something to their building is really golden information. And so only one is going to be your catalyst project. I do not score the final applications. So I get asked a lot, which ones of these will score the best? And I will do my best to give you that critique, but it's really up to you to decide locally which one are you going to present. But it's kind of fun because we want to make sure that we're funding the best projects. Next slide. So many things that cities do is they use tax increment financing or urban revitalization or consolidated abatement. Those have been the most popular ones, but recently hotel motel tax and local option sales tax, if local option sales tax, if your referendum allows it, so any legal purpose, that's becoming a great tool for match. Hotel motel tax, half of that has to be used for tourism or putting heads in beds. The other half is the discretion of the municipality, and they're becoming really popular matches to these grants. And then in kind, I really want you to use your imagination on what it could be. Sometimes it's hauling trash away to the landfill, or it could be other things. Some cities that have municipal utilities have even decided to give them free water or free electric or gas if they have a municipal utility. Use your imagination, kind of create something new that you can use and take advantage of other partners. Next slide. So the uses for those then are things like facade grants or mini facade grants. Mini facade grant is like a component grant. This year, we're only going to fund signage or awnings or something. This is really popular when you think that, let's say you do the request for proposal and you get 3 buildings that apply. You can only present one. Maybe through these other local incentives that you create, you could help offset those costs and fund a couple more. You're just getting more improvements to your downtown. So next slide. And then the last thing I want to touch on briefly is cities have the ability to decide, do they want to allow certain building condition or building use. If you apply for a downtown property and you're going to allow storefront residential on the storefront side of that one, it will not get past pre-application. We will never fund that. We hate residential in downtowns. They hurt your valuation. And so we're saying, if you have that ordinance in place, make sure you're enforcing it, because we know when you don't. Next slide. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to show you just a couple examples in this toolkit of good projects, and it's really taking care of the building envelope or good basic design. Next slide. So what we do is we encourage towns to download from IEDA's website the Downtown Design Guide. This will give you a decent idea of what we expect from these kinds of tools, best practices, if you will. Next slide. When you consider a Downtown Design Guide, these are suggestions, but what we'd really like you to do is say how substantially you comply with the Downtown Design Guide can determine how much your local incentive is. We require match anyway, so if you're going to provide match, we want you to make that incentive based. Next slide. So what works and what doesn't, if you could. So what's the use of a local or governmental incentive? It's never free money. Our goal is to provide local incentives through the city that create that atmosphere that we're going to match private dollars. So we have to decide how much do we have to do to encourage the best use of your dollars as a private individual. So the golden rule for incentives at the local level starts with he who has the gold rules. So cities have to decide, how do they want to spend that money, and what are some tools they can use to encourage appropriate private responses? Next slide. I wanted to show you a couple pictures of some projects that we really liked from the past. This is a building that was screwed up in Grettinger. This is actually their third award in a town of 832 people. That was the design they proposed. Next slide. It's going to be commercial on the first floor, apartment above. This was one that was done in Williamsburg, Iowa, and it was totally screwed up. They did this metal wrap on it and really took away all the cool pieces of the building. And so you can see by the design, now we're really trying to get back to the way it was built. Next slide. This is Fairbank, Iowa, a town a little over 1,000. This was owned by grandparents, and the grandson acquired the building from his grandparents. They'd used it for storage for almost 30 years. This was a great catalyst project. I got to tour this with Debbie Durham. Now it's got a restaurant in it that's occupied, and they did appropriate rehab, and we're thrilled about the after. Next slide. So those are things that worked. What didn't really work is an application without plans or some kind of a picture, no photos or just lousy photos, or a building in an area that will not spur further development. Once in a while, we get an application on the edge of town and said, if we can fix up this commercial building and there's no other commercial buildings around it, we know that it's not going to be a catalyst because there's no other buildings it's touching or close to. That's why this has always gone to downtown. I'm not saying we'll never do one on the edge, but we need it to be a catalyst. Next slide. Sometimes they try to deceive us with really, really low cost estimates. We've done this enough. It's not our first day on the job. We know that when these buildings come in with extremely low estimates, it's probably not realistic. And then number 5, the use is really not going to be a catalyst. We always get like chambers of commerce saying, we want to remodel our office. It's on the tax rolls, but there's only one chamber of commerce office in a building. So it's not it's not going to be catalytic, or they have limited business hours. So none of those things will work. And then the last bullet there, it's already got a business going in it. So it doesn't meet the vacancy requirements that we require. Next slide. So if the city or the property owner has little or no investment, it's not going to score very well. We have had projects that get through pre-application with a score of 10 out of 10 that are not competitive and will never be funded. So be really careful. Don't think just because you got an invitation to do a full application that you've still got work to do. And then number 7, we've had people tell us this is the last building in our downtown to do. Well, we're never going to fund that because it's not catalytic. Next slide. And then the last 3 in this section, it's not really addressing the total building, so it's just a partial rehab. Number 9, there are people that put the same answer to several of the questions. You saw the 5 areas that we're looking for. It's like, if I've read it once, I don't need to read it again. And then number 10, demolition is eligible, but it may not be very competitive. Out of the 300, we're approaching 300 projects. We've now done 2 of those. And the only reason we did them is they provided drawings of the new building that's going to be in its place. And so we agreed to take it down. Next slide. There is an emergency piece to this, but we're never going to reward bad behavior. So if you have a building that you think could meet the emergency classification, you need to just call me or email me and we need to talk through that. But just understand deferred maintenance is never going to be funded. We have had building owners that sold it to a new building owner, and then the new building owner contacted us and said, we didn't realize how bad a shape it was. Is this a conversation we can have? And we do have those conversations. Debbie Durham, our director, is the only one in the state of Iowa that can approve these. So we have to make sure we're telling a story that makes this an emergency project. Next slide. That's really it in a nutshell. Sorry it was so fast. 30 minutes is a hard thing to get through with this, but that's the program.
We appreciate your time with us today, Jim, and I know that you've got another meeting at 1:30. One quick question for you. Can the building owners do the work themselves?
Sure, and many times they do. We're not going to reimburse them for any of their time or labor, so that can be matched. So you've got to make sure that whatever the award is through Catalyst is all for materials.
All right. Well, we again appreciate your time and energy that you put into this program. And I really think it's nice that you have the pre-application so people don't have to spend a lot of time on projects that maybe aren't a good match for the grant. For those of you that joined us late, we will be posting a recording of this session on our website early next week, as well as the PDF and of the presentation. We'll send out an email reminder of that. So we appreciate you being with us today. Hope to see you
No, no
on
problem.
November 6th for the Iowa Arts Council. See you then,
Sounds very
everyone.
good. Thank you.